Wow, that's black mold. I personally visited this tiny house to verify her claims.
Not only that, it's filthy. It's disgusting.
America, you just saw black mold growing on the window of a tiny house that Seattle's new mayor tried to pass off as compassionate housing. But here's what should make you absolutely furious. Katie Wilson bragged about placing this woman during her State of the City address, while this same woman is still living in a tent surrounded by drug paraphernalia.
I've never had such a strong sense that we're at the beginning of something great. A growing sense that maybe, yes, we can do big things.
Meanwhile, the woman she used as a quote-unquote poster child for success.
Why did you use me as an example? And that's not an example. The city does that all the time. Whenever there's a tiny home available, they give it to one of us.
That's Crystal Rawlings, 5 months sober, and she's calling out the mayor for using her as a political theater stunt while offering her a health hazard. What is up, guys? Tyson DeLaCruz here. Thank you so much for rocking with me. Before we dive into this, I want to give a huge shout out to Jonathan Cho for being the boots on the ground in Seattle, documenting what the politicians actually don't want you to see. This, my friends, is the kind of journalism that actually matters. Now, let me show you how Seattle's new quote-unquote compassionate mayor is running the most expensive game of whack-a-mole in American history and lying about the results. Let's start with the encampment that made Katie Wilson a hero in her own mind. Ballard, specifically the Burke-Gilman Trail area, Wilson delayed a scheduled sweep, claiming that she wanted time to help people transition into housing rather than them just being displaced.
That pause allowed us to basically help them make that transition without the disruption of a sweep.
She gave outreach workers an extra month, and the result, guys, hit the drum roll. 6 people out of the entire encampment. That's how many people she saved out of an encampment that had way more than 6 residents.
It's been really hard out here, so I know. People on the pathway saying really ugly things to us, like every day.
Meet China and her boyfriend Dre. They were part of the Ballard encampment, and guess what? You wouldn't believe this. They're still homeless because the city offered Dre a spot in a men's shelter, which would mean abandoning his girlfriend and their dog.
They told us they were going to give us housing after the mayor came, and then all of a sudden it just disappeared. Nobody really got housing except for one person out of the entire camp.
Watch the bait and switch here. This is worse than a 90s car salesman. First, they promise you housing. Then when the mayor leaves, it becomes shelter beds, which means communal living. No pets, no couples. They got to get separated. So people say no. And the city, obviously, they act shocked that their generous offer got rejected. Now, here's the beautiful part. After spending weeks and weeks clearing up a camp on 41st Street and lining the area with boulders and eco blocks to prevent people from returning, guess what happened?
A growing encampment in Ballard has popped up just after another was removed nearby. It appears the camp that was removed by the city last month near the Burke-Gilman Trail has seemingly relocated 2 blocks away on 43rd Street.
They moved 2 blocks and a new camp is actually bigger than the old camp. 41st Street and 43rd Street. That is $127 million budget deficit worth of progress right there, my guys.
There I talked with a woman who was 5 months sober and had 3 small dogs. We were able to identify a spot for her in a tiny house village.
Crystal Rawlings, 5 months sober, 3 dogs. Wilson makes it sound like she personally saved this woman's life, except there is one tiny problem. Well, actually, several mold-covered problems.
I just thought that something big in the works was bigger than a tiny home.
It's run by the Low Income Housing Institute, one of the many nonprofits contracted by the city for homeless services.
I'm not going to have them breathing in that mold.
The housing the city offered her, Unit 71 in the Interbay Village, run by the Low Income Housing Institute, one of those nonprofit Seattle contracts worth millions. And when Jonathan Cho went to verify Crystal's claims about the conditions,
I personally visited this tiny house to verify her claims.
Not only that, it's filthy. It's disgusting.
While I was unable to get inside the unit, I did see what appeared to be mold spores growing on the window frame.
black mold growing on the window frame. In a unit the city thought was acceptable to offer a woman who's been 5 months sober and trying to rebuild her life.
Rawlings says the city and Lehigh did not offer her any alternatives.
You want her to watch the whole process?
Yes, because if she would have done that, then she would know what's working and what's not working for us.
So needless to say, Crystal is still in a tent surrounded by needles and despair. But my friends, Katie Wilson got to take her victory lap on stage, talking about the overwhelming success of her new approach. You know what's really overwhelming, you guys? The audacity of using a woman you failed as evidence of your success. Here's how Seattle's system actually works. They announce a suite, outreach workers show up, they offer shelter beds that require giving up pets, partners, or privacy. Most people refuse, obviously, for other reasons as well. Then the city moves everyone just far enough that it looks like they actually did something.
Where are you headed next, sir?
What do you mean? There's nowhere to go. They just push us around. What do you mean?
It's kind of like when you were a kid and your family told you to eat the vegetables and you ate everything else and you just kind of moved the vegetables around on the plate. Just me? They just push us around. That is the whole strategy because Wilson made it clear. No more aggressive sweeps, just gentle nudging from block to block while taxpayers fund the world's slowest game of musical tents.
Did anyone here take shelter being offered?
No.
So where are you going to head now?
Probably a couple blocks down the street.
0 people accepted shelter. 0 people. And their plan? Move a couple blocks down the street, which is exactly what happened on Ballard. 41st Street gets cleared. 43rd Street becomes the new hotspot.
And this is the game of whack-a-mole. People simply now go across the street and set up shop.
Whack-a-mole, except this version costs Seattle taxpayers millions and millions of dollars, destroys local business, and accomplishes absolutely nothing except for letting Mayor Wilson pretend she's being compassionate. While Wilson's busy congratulating herself for moving tents between blocks and blocks, let me show you who's actually paying the price.
What does that mean when you said 100% lack of support from the city?
Well, they just haven't helped us. Customers are scared. They've told me they are literally scared to walk down the street and come to my business.
Edward Bunker owns this restaurant on West Lake Park. Construction on one side, open air drug use and homeless on the other. And he's temporarily closing because customers are literally afraid to walk to his business.
As far as what I would like to see from the mayor is I would like to see some crime prevention. I'd like to see some cleaning up of the streets, making people feel safe again.
Crime prevention, cleaning up the streets, making people feel safe. Basic government function, you guys. And Wilson's response to business owners like this one?
The Office of Economic Development's Small Business Expediting Program is working to help cut red tape for small businesses across the city. And we are offering more support for small businesses to address property damage and security issues through the Back to Business Fund.
Word salad with extra croutons. Small Business Expediting Program. Back to Business Fund. 0 specifics. 0 accountability. Just basic bureaucracy jargon while restaurant owners lose their livelihood because the city won't remove drug dealers from the sidewalk. Now let's talk about the question Wilson refuses to answer. How are you paying for any of this?
My administration will also be introducing legislation to City Council to fund shelter expansion and make it faster and easier to build shelter in our city.
Wilson wants to build 1,000 new shelter units, expand housing operations, reduce childcare costs, public grocery stores, all of these grandiose plans. And when somebody asks her the obvious question,
what programs would you be willing to cut if it does come to that?
We have a large budget deficit. We are going to have to make some hard choices and really decide where our priorities lie. And I mean, but just honestly, with thousands of people on our street every night, this has to be at the top.
She won't say. Seattle's facing a $127 million budget deficit. Wilson promises no tax increases, but she won't name a single program that she's going to actually cut. Because in Wilson's world of word salad, money appears when you call something compassionate.
One contentious issue that the mayor brought up is Seattle's network of crime-fighting cameras, which some fear could be used for
unintended purposes like immigration enforcement, well, the mayor says she's going to need more time to weigh all the arguments for and against.
She won't even commit to keeping crime cameras running because some people fear they would be misused. So businesses are getting robbed, residents are getting assaulted, and Wilson still's weighing in on the argument that whether catching criminals on camera is worth the risk. America, Katie Wilson just gave us an absolute masterclass in progressive failures. She delayed an encampment sweep to help people transition. 6 out of dozens accepting housing. The rest moved 2 blocks away to set up a bigger camp. She used a 5-month sober woman with 3 dogs as a success story, except that woman rejected moldy, health hazard city housing. No alternatives offered, no apology given, just pure propaganda juice. Businesses are closing because customers don't want to walk past drug dealers to get dinner. Wilson's solution? Create another small business program with 0 details and 0 funding while promising no tax increases during a $127 million deficit. Here's what Seattle is learning the hard way. Compassion without accountability isn't compassion. It's chaos with a marketing budget. You can't help people by offering them mold-infested shacks and then calling it a success. You can't fix homelessness by moving camps just a block away. And you can't run a city on vague promises and word salads with extra croutons while businesses collapse and residents flee. For Katie Wilson, perception beats reality every single time. And Seattle taxpayers are the ones paying for this performance. Let me know what you think about this. Drop it down in the comment section down below. Smash the like button if you kindly would. Share, subscribe, and as always, guys, I'll catch you on the next one.